Some people don't fall because they made wrong choices. They fall because they never had a safe place to process what they felt inside. There are promises from God that do not face demons first. They face doubts, fear, insecurity, shame, and emotional silence before they ever appear. And many times the greatest spiritual attack does not happen in the body. It happens in the identity long before the purpose is born. And when we understand this truth, the story of Mary stops being just a biblical account and becomes a deep mirror of our own emotional journey. Mary, the hidden battle before the birth of Jesus. Mary did not begin as a symbol of faith. She began as a vulnerable young woman with human expectations, emotional limitations, and wounds no one could see. Before she was remembered in songs, she faced nights of fear, intense silence, invisible judgment, and responsibilities far too big for her age. The greatest battle was not carrying the miracle. It was carrying the internal conflicts the miracle brought. Have you ever carried something precious inside you while trying to control anxiety, fear, loneliness, and an emotional weight no one could perceive? Have you ever needed to smile on the outside while holding your heart together on the inside? Have you lived moments where no one understood what God was building, and you had to learn to trust without explanation, without a manual, without guarantees? Mary knew the pain of obeying without being understood, and that hurt more than any physical labor. The story you are about to hear is not distant. It is real in people who are trying to survive emotionally while carrying spiritual promises that feel too big. Mary's greatest victory was having faith while her soul was still maturing and no one applauded. Maybe your greatest victory right now is happening in silence before any external confirmation. And from now on, the more you understand this journey, the more you will see that God's calling almost always arrives before any emotional preparation. And that is where the story begins to come alive inside of us. If this story has already touched something inside you, subscribe now, because this channel is a journey of emotional, spiritual, and family healing. The calling that no one can explain. Mary's life shows us that God does not wait for you to be ready before trusting something precious into your hands. In Luke 1:26-38, the angel announced that she would be the mother of Jesus. Without warning, without a manual, without emotional explanation. Mary had no age, no experience, and no answers to carry something that enormous. And maybe you have already lived something like this. A responsibility, a dream, a change, or a decision that arrived when you barely knew how to breathe. Sometimes God trusts something to you before you ever feel prepared. Mary was not strong. She did not have emotional security. She did not have ready-made advice. And yet she said, yes. Faith does not begin when you understand everything. Faith begins when you accept walking with what you still do not understand. The biblical story of Mary reminds us that emotional healing, identity in God, trust, and inner transformation do not happen before the challenge. They happen inside the challenge. Maybe you have already felt God push you into something while you were still carrying pain, doubts, or memories no one sees. That is where He begins shaping you from the inside, step by step. Mary carried something no one could explain, and that hurts because a promise without explanation brings fear, judgment, and loneliness. Many people live the same thing today. responsibilities that arrive before support, dreams that are born before understanding, changes that come before courage. There is a silent battle before the answer, before the victory, before the confirmation. Maybe God has already spoken something to your heart and you think, but I still can't. I still don't know how. I still don't have anywhere to go. And when God trusts something to you before peace arrives, it is a sign that something greater has begun to be born. When the promise looks like sin. When Mary becomes pregnant without being married, the weight is not only spiritual, it is emotional and social. In Matthew 1:18-25, we see that she carries something holy, but no one can believe it. To the eyes of the culture, it looked like a serious mistake, something shameful and without explanation. Mary was obeying God, but people saw the opposite. And maybe you have already felt this when your faithfulness makes you look wrong in front of those who never heard what God spoke to your heart. The hardest pain was not the pregnancy. It was people's interpretation, because they judged what they had no way of understanding. God's promise made Mary deal with silence, sideways looks, hidden conversations, and questions that wound the heart. How many times have you been faithful and still misunderstood? Obedience does not always bring applause. Sometimes it brings loneliness, shame, and internal doubts you don't know how to share. Faith is not living without fear. It is walking in spite of it. Mary learned something profound. Not every promise comes with explanation, confirmation, or immediate acceptance. Some blessings arrive before understanding, and you must trust while enduring judgment, silence, and long nights. Many times what God asks of you feels contradictory to human eyes, and your heart has no space to defend itself. And before recognition comes, there is a period in which you look guilty simply for having been faithful. But something greater is still unfolding. And before the answer arrives, there is an emotional journey that almost no one imagines. The battle of silence. Mary lives something deeply spiritual, but she has no way to explain it. In Matthew 1:18-25, God's promise becomes a reason for conversation, suspicion, and public shame. And there were no words that could change that. Any attempt to explain would sound like an excuse, an invented story, or a convenient lie. Silence was not weakness. It was emotional protection. Sometimes the greatest act of faith is not speaking, but learning not to justify yourself before people who do not have the maturity to understand what God is doing. Mary's greatest pain was not external opinion. It was the internal battle, holding sadness, confusion, fear, and loneliness without losing the purpose she carried inside. You have lived something like this too. Holding back tears, hiding insecurities, facing nights filled with question, and all in silence so you don't fall apart. Not all suffering is visible. The greatest spiritual war is keeping the heart aligned when no one knows the emotional fight you are facing. God forms maturity in the hours when no one applauds you. Spiritual maturity is not trying to convince others. It is learning to wait for God's timing without becoming emotionally corrupted. Mary did not need to argue, prove, or justify. She needed to stay focused so she wouldn't lose her peace. Some promises are not explained. They are waited for. There are moments when God asks for silence because speaking increases the pain, but staying quiet protects the faith. And just as Mary held her silence, maybe you are holding something that cannot yet be spoken. without losing what you carry inside? How many wars are you fighting in silence, trying not to collapse on the inside? The trial of love. When Joseph discovers the pregnancy, he does not understand, and that wounds the trust. In Matthew 1:19-25, we see that he considers ending the relationship because in human eyes the situation looked like betrayal. The promise affected marriage, reputation, emotional security, and love. What was sacred for Mary looked like destruction to him. Maybe you have lived something similar. God spoke to you, but the person you love could not see it. Mary's emotional pain was not only public opinion. It was the doubt of the one who held the most intimate place in her heart. Nothing hurts more than being questioned by the eyes of someone you love. You may know that feeling. Explaining, trying to calm, trying not to lose your peace while the other person cannot understand what you feel or carry. Some battles are not spiritual, they are emotional, made of insecurity, silence, fear of loss, and the feeling of injustice. Mary had no way to prove anything. She had no way to convince Joseph with words. The healing of that wound would not come from argument. It would come from God's action inside his heart, exactly as it happened through a dream. Sometimes it is not you who needs to explain, and it is God who needs to touch the other person. Some promises do not depend on you defending them, but on trusting that he will act at the right time. And before the answer arrives, there is always a phase in which you try not to blame yourself for what you are carrying. And what if the greatest battle is not convincing others, but not blaming yourself for what God asked you to carry? The pressure of destiny. Mary carries Jesus in her womb, and that was not power, it was daily responsibility. In Luke 2, we see that she was not living a spiritual spectacle, but an emotional routine filled with surrender, care, and vigilance. A promise is not glamour. It is sensitivity, inner discipline, and focus on what no one sees. Many times you imagine that a promise is victory, but before it comes, there is inner change, hidden tears, and difficult decisions. God never gives destiny without working the heart first. Mary had to regulate emotions, deal with fear, anxiety, insecurity, exhaustion, loneliness, and silent guilt. Carrying something before public confirmation requires emotional strength. Maybe you know this battle. Trying to smile when no one knows the weight you feel inside, controlling thoughts, guarding feelings, praying when your chest tightens, starting over when your soul is tired. Destiny is not built in victory. It is built in emotional self-control that no one notices. A promise without healing becomes a burden. Healing without purpose becomes stagnation. Purpose and healing walk together in prayer. Before manifestation comes inner transformation, and Mary learned this in silence. It is not enough to have a promise. You need a healed heart to carry it with lightness. Maybe God is preparing you internally before confirming you externally. And where the war is deepest, destiny is most precious. In what area are you trying to carry a promise without having received healing first? The invisible victory. Mary wins before the birth of Jesus ever happens. In Luke 1 and Luke 2, we see that her greatest achievement was not the delivery, it was trust before the evidence. She did not wait to see the miracle in order to believe in it. She matured her heart while still carrying doubts, fear, and silence. Victory is not when something happens. It is when your heart learns to trust before it does. God did not begin the miracle in the stable. He began it inside her. The soul matures before the circumstance changes, and that is harder than any external battle. Mary became strong on the inside before having concrete answers, before having confirmation, before having security. Maybe you know this. God begins changing you internally when nothing around you seems different. Trust comes before arrival. Hope comes before the door opens. Peace comes before victory. And not everyone sees how much you fought on the inside. Sometimes God does not change the situation first. He changes you first, so that when the promise arrives, you do not destroy what He is building. Inner growth is a spiritual victory. Mary won without applause, without a stage, without recognition. Only with a silent faith that strengthened throughout the process. Maybe God is forming you now so that the blessing that will come does not find a fragile heart. And before visible transformation, there is always an invisible miracle happening inside you. What is the change you believe God is making in you today? You do not need to negotiate your identity to be accepted, because God knows you before any human explanation. You do not need to blame yourself because someone does not understand your process. Sometimes the pain is too internal to be translated into words. You do not need to prove anything to people who never fought the same emotional battle you are facing right now. Mary's true spiritual war was not against Herod. It was against fear, insecurity, loneliness, judgment, and human expectations. Faith is not winning on the outside. It is not losing yourself on the inside. God saw every tear Mary shed in silence when no one perceived the emotional weight she carried. God validated every night in which she felt alone, confused, and without answers. God protected her reputation when she had no way to explain anything to anyone. Spiritual justice did not arrive when the baby was born. It arrived when the soul matured before the victory appeared. Sometimes the miracle does not begin on the outside. It begins inside the heart. There are pains you carry in silence, just as Mary carried something precious before she had explanation, support, or security. The soul matures before the promise is born, and many times you are winning on the inside while no one notices. Now ask yourself with sincerity, what are you trying to carry alone? In which area does silence feel the heaviest? How much suffering comes from trying to please people instead of sustaining the purpose God entrusted to you? And remember, Mary's battle proves that destiny is greater than pain, but emotional healing is greater than evidence. If this message brought light to your heart, write, "Lord, strengthen my heart before the promise is born." Subscribe to the channel to continue learning about the Word of God. And if you want to see how destinies can be attacked before they are born, watch now the video about Athalia, prayer. Lord, you know every silent battle, every hidden tear, and every weight the heart carries without words. Strengthen our faith before the evidence. Heal the soul before the answer, and bring rest to the areas where silence hurts. Teach us to trust in your timing as Mary trusted even without explanations. May every promise be sustained by maturity, peace, and the direction of your Spirit. Amen.